The courtroom wasn't supposed to feel like a stage. But that morning in Cook County Circuit Court, the air felt heavy with performance, like velvet curtains about to part and reveal something unspeakably tragic. It was early June, the kind of morning where Chicago humidity dripped down your neck before 9 a.m., and Valerie Granger sat in the front row of the plaintiff's section, staring into the glossy wood grain of the bench in front of her. Her hands were cold, not because of the air conditioning, which was, as always, barely functional, but because of what she saw. The woman on the stand was wearing her dress, not a dress like hers, not a similar cut, not a similar hue. Her dress. A deep sapphire blue, sleeveless Dior with a low back and diamond loop at the nape. A gift from her husband Mitchell 3 years ago on her 38th birthday. He'd given it to her with breakfast in bed and a note that read, "To my queen, wear this to rule." It wasn't just clothing, it was a symbol of their years together, of the public life they built, of the illusion they maintained. She had worn it to gala fundraisers, benefit concerts, and once to a state attorney's annual dinner, and now it was draped over Danielle Monroe's body like war paint. Danielle, her husband's mistress. The moment Danielle walked in, every pair of eyes in the room shifted. Some recognized her from the tabloid headlines. The Senator's Affair, Chicago power couple implodes, Granger caught in love triangle. But those eyes shifted again when they saw the dress. That deep, lustrous blue was unforgettable. It had a history, and anyone familiar with Valerie's public appearances would remember it. The message was clear. Danielle wasn't just here to testify. She was here to humiliate. Valerie felt her throat close. Not with sadness, but with rage so sharp it felt surgical. Next to her, her attorney, Martin Heller, leaned over and whispered, "Ignore the theatrics, Valerie. We're here for facts, not fashion." But he didn't get it. This wasn't about fashion. This was about erasure. Danielle was erasing her, replacing her, step by calculated step. First with Mitchell, now with the life Valerie had built. And no one seemed to care. Not the bailiff, not the court stenographer, not even Judge Hayworth, who merely raised an eyebrow and continued on like the blue silk wasn't screaming in the room. But Mitchell cared. She saw it on his face. As Danielle adjusted herself in the chair, Mitchell avoided Valerie's gaze entirely. He turned slightly in his seat, angling toward the witness stand with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. His fingers twitched against his knee, an old tell from his days in law school when he was bluffing a point he wasn't confident in. Valerie had memorized that twitch years ago. She knew what it meant now. He didn't expect Danielle to wear the dress. He didn't approve, and that scared him. She almost smiled at that. But before she could process it further, the courtroom doors creaked. At first, no one turned around. Courtroom doors opened all the time. Latecomers, interns, forgotten coffee runs. But this time, the sound echoed in a strange way, like a pause in the film reel. Then came the footsteps, measured, heavy. The judge's clerk turned her head first, then the bailiff, then Mitchell, and that's when it happened. Mitchell Granger went pale. Not pale like nervous, pale like haunted. Valerie followed his gaze. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood just inside the threshold, clean-shaven, late 40s, maybe early 50s, eyes like stone. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Valerie had never seen him before, but Mitchell had. And suddenly, the entire temperature of the courtroom changed. Whispers erupted across the pews. Someone fumbled a pen. The bailiff stepped forward instinctively, though the man made no threatening move. He simply reached into his coat, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a manila folder. He held it against his chest like it held the weight of a century. "Your Honor," he said, voice gravel smooth, "apologies for the interruption, but I believe the court will want to hear what I have to say." Judge Hayworth didn't miss a beat. "Name and purpose, sir?" The man glanced at Mitchell, then at Danielle, and then his eyes landed on Valerie. "My name is Charles Darnell," he said, "and I'm here to correct the record." Valerie blinked. Charles Darnell. The name meant nothing to her, but the way Mitchell's jaw tensed, that meant everything. And in that moment, something shifted deep in Valerie's chest. A click. A turn of the lock she didn't know she still held. This wasn't going to be just another day in divorce court. This was the day the game changed. Behind every perfect couple, there's a truth waiting to be unearthed. It was a bright October afternoon in downtown Chicago, and if you passed by the 38th floor of the sleek glass high-rise at East Wacker Drive, you'd think life was perfect for the Whitmore family. And maybe it was, on the surface. But perfection, as it often turns out, is a dangerous illusion. Meet Claire Whitmore. To most, she was the epitome of elegance and quiet resilience. 42 years old, head of fundraising for the Chicago Institute of Contemporary Art, mother of a teenage daughter, and until recently, wife of one of the Midwest's most successful real estate investors. Claire wasn't born into wealth, but she married into it, or more precisely, she built it alongside her husband from the ground up. They met as undergrads at Northwestern. Claire was majoring in art history with a minor in business communications. Tom, to everyone but her, was studying economics with a dream of flipping neighborhoods. He had ambition, fire, and a magnetism that drew Claire like a moth to a flame. They married young, 23, pooling every dollar they had into their first real estate flip in Southside Chicago. It was a disaster, but Claire stuck with him. By their 30s, Tom Whitmore had become a fixture in real estate circles. He had the smile of a politician, the ruthlessness of a banker, and the PR machine of a Hollywood celebrity. He built the Whitmore Group into a multi-million-dollar empire, with high-rises and shopping centers stretching from Chicago to Indianapolis. But Claire, she was the anchor. She wasn't just the pretty wife who waved from the sidelines. She reviewed contracts, brokered donor deals, and transformed their home into a revolving door of influence. Cocktail parties with museum board members, fundraising galas, silent auctions with six-figure sculptures. Claire was the reason their name became synonymous with taste in the city. Still, somewhere along the climb, the foundation cracked. Enter Julia Hartman. If Claire was the queen of old money elegance, Julia was the chaotic muse of new money ambition. 29, with an MBA from Georgetown and a background in strategic partnerships, she joined the Whitmore Group as Tom's executive coordinator during the pandemic recovery boom. Her LinkedIn was filled with glowing recommendations, her smile was camera-ready, and within 3 months she was traveling on every business trip Tom took. Within 6, she was seen leaving the office after hours in his car. Claire noticed the perfume first, sandalwood and citrus, not hers. Then came the gaslighting. "You're imagining things, Claire. Julia's just driven. She reminds me of you when we were younger." The comparison wasn't just cruel, it was surgical. Behind closed doors, the Whitmores were unraveling. Tom became distant, cold. He spent more nights in Indianapolis checking on site progress. Their daughter Ellie overheard arguments behind doors Claire thought were closed. Even the house staff noticed the tension. Meals going untouched, wine glasses multiplying, locks changed without warning. Claire's once perfect world was splintering, and no one wanted to listen. Tom's PR team was ruthless. When whispers of separation started circulating, Claire's image was quietly erased from company newsletters. She was taking time off from board meetings. Even the gala she hosted for the Institute was co-chaired by someone new, Julia. The final blow came not in words, but in appearance. Julia arrived at a private gallery opening, arm in arm with Tom, wearing Claire's dress. Not a look-alike, not a coincidence. Claire's exact custom-made Alexander McQueen, the one Tom had gifted her for their 15th anniversary. A sapphire silk gown with an embroidered back and a hidden message stitched inside the lining, to the woman who made everything possible. It was a declaration, not of love, but war. Julia wasn't just taking her man, she was becoming Claire. Friends began referring to Julia as Tom's partner at industry events. A real estate column in the Chicago Tribune mistakenly credited her as Julia Whitmore. And as if orchestrated by cruel fate, Claire received a court summons. Tom was filing for divorce. Grounds: irreconcilable differences and emotional instability. The man she'd built an empire with was rewriting history without her. He wanted everything: the penthouse, the downtown office, full control of the foundation they co-founded, and yes, even custody of their daughter, claiming Claire was unfit. It was outrageous, it was strategic, and it was working. But Claire wasn't going to be erased. While Tom and Julia were playing public power games, Claire quietly hired a lawyer, Victor Hastings, a civil litigation attorney with a reputation for tearing apart glossy facades. He didn't care about country club etiquette. He cared about truth and justice. As discovery began, Victor unearthed threads no one saw coming. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, property acquisitions under shell LLCs, insider deals that benefited Julia's college roommate. But it wasn't just financial corruption, it was personal sabotage. Claire's medical records had been subpoenaed and leaked. Anonymous tips accused her of mental health breakdowns, none of which existed. Her daughter's private school received an anonymous complaint questioning Claire's parenting habits. Even the family dog's vet was contacted with false claims of neglect. They weren't just divorcing her, they were erasing her. Yet, Claire remained composed. At least in public. Behind closed doors, she wrote letters to her daughter, one for every month since the divorce filing, just in case Tom succeeded. She cataloged every dress, every piece of jewelry, every artwork they'd bought together, not for revenge, for record, for memory, for proof. And she waited. Because Claire knew one thing that Tom and Julia didn't: the truth doesn't disappear just because you change the narrative. And then something unexpected happened. 6 months into the legal war with the trial looming, Tom's legal team pulled a bold move. They placed Julia on the witness list, not as a supporting party, but as a character witness against Claire. It was unthinkable, but also strategic. Julia would testify that Claire had unstable episodes, that she was obsessed, that she had threatened her. And Julia, she would do it. She would stand in court wearing Claire's dress, smile that camera-ready smile, and play the victim. But Claire had something neither of them anticipated: someone. His name was Lucas Monroe, and when he walked into the courtroom that day, he wasn't there for a spectacle. He was there for reckoning. But that is a story for another part. Claire Whitmore had always believed that control was a quiet kind of power, the ability to remain composed even as everything around you shifted. But nothing prepared her for what she felt when she received the witness list from her husband's legal team. At the bottom, just below 3 corporate accountants and an estate appraiser, was a name she hoped never to see again in that context: Julia Hartman. Claire read it 3 times. She hadn't slept the night before, and for a brief moment she convinced herself she was hallucinating. But there it was, black ink on crisp white legal paper. Julia wasn't just the woman who took her husband. She wasn't just wearing her clothes and living in her shadow. Now, she was coming to court to burn down what was left. Victor Hastings, Claire's attorney, was already pouring coffee when she showed up at his office that morning. "You look like hell," he greeted bluntly. That was Victor's charm: zero sugarcoating, maximum precision. He was in his 50s, with a thinning hairline and a perpetual squint, like he could always see the lie before it was spoken. Claire handed him the document. Victor scanned the page, then sighed, deep and long. "They're going for full character assassination," he muttered. "Do we fight it?" she asked. "We let her talk," Victor said, "and then we burn it down. But first, we need leverage." Claire spent the next few days retreating into silence. Not depression, calculation. She reread every note, every photograph, every record she'd been keeping since the day she felt Julia's scent on Tom's jacket. She wasn't just preparing for trial. She was preparing for war. One morning, while flipping through old emails, she stumbled on something peculiar: a forwarded itinerary from 3 years ago, a business trip Tom had taken to Atlanta. At the time, he claimed it was a real estate summit. But now, Claire noticed something odd. The hotel reservation wasn't under Tom Whitmore's name. It was under J. Alexander. She dug deeper. Flight receipts, Uber transactions, restaurant bookings, all matching J. Alexander across 3 different cities over the past 2 years. It wasn't just a cover for cheating. It was a full alias. She called Victor. "This might be it," he said, "but we need someone who can connect it to finances." That someone was Lucas Monroe. Lucas wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a private investigator either. He was something in between, a former IRS forensic analyst turned independent financial auditor. If there was money moving in the shadows, Lucas would see it. He didn't ask for explanations, just names, dates, and permission to dig. 3 days later, he returned with a slim folder and a tight expression. "This alias," he said, tapping the name J. Alexander. "It's linked to a Delaware LLC that's funneled close to $2.7 million over the last 18 months. And guess who authorized the wire transfers?" Claire stared at the spreadsheet. One name repeated like a haunting refrain: Julia Hartman. The timing was damning. Every trip Julia took with Tom, every promotional event, every gala, all financed, at least in part, through shell corporations tied to this phantom identity. But there was more. Lucas leaned forward, lowering his voice. I traced an internal memo from Whitmore Group's HR department. 2 months ago, Julia submitted an internal complaint, claimed she was being emotionally manipulated by a female board member. Claire blinked. That's me, Lucas nodded. It was filed, then withdrawn a week later, but it's still in the system. She's building a narrative, Claire murmured. No, Lucas said. She's building a character, one the jury will believe. Claire knew what came next. Character assassination wasn't about truth, it was about perception. They'd make her seem jealous, vindictive, unstable. Julia would play the frightened victim. Tom would sit stoically at the defense table, wounded but dignified. And the court, the public, would lap it up, unless Claire hit first. Victor was hesitant. If we go public, he warned, it opens everything. Media, scrutiny, cross-examination. You'll be dragged. I've been dragged for 2 years. Claire said flatly, it's time they bleed. They devised a plan. Claire would release a statement to the press, not through gossip blogs or talk shows, but in a full-length op-ed for the Chicago Tribune. Title, When Power Tries to Erase You. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. She spoke about women who are replaced without consent, about gaslighting disguised as strategy, about how abuse can wear a tuxedo and smile for cameras. And she ended it with a quote from her mother, "They can steal your story. Just don't let them write the ending." The article went viral in less than 36 hours. Suddenly, Claire wasn't a scorned wife, she was a survivor. But public sympathy wasn't enough. They still needed a smoking gun. That came in the form of a security tape, delivered anonymously to Victor's office. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Julia entering Claire's storage unit 3 months prior using a duplicate keycard. She removed a dress bag, examined the contents, then left. The date, 2 weeks before Julia wore the McQueen dress in public. She stole it, Claire whispered. Victor smiled. No, she staged it. Now we prove it. They subpoenaed the storage facility's logs. Julia's name wasn't on the account. Her access was unauthorized. Combined with Claire's op-ed and the financial trail, it wasn't just a civil case anymore. It was theft. And suddenly, the witness who was supposed to destroy Claire's credibility had become her greatest asset. The pretrial hearing was set for late April. Claire sat in the courtroom in a black pantsuit. No designer labels, no makeup beyond foundation. She looked like someone ready to testify at her own funeral. But inside, she was holding the match. Across the room, Tom looked nervous for the first time in months. Julia was pale. Her lawyer whispered rapidly into her ear. The judge entered and the room quieted. Victor stood first. Your Honor, we request to submit a motion to disqualify the witness Julia Hartman on the grounds of criminal misconduct relevant to the case. The judge blinked. On what basis? Victor laid out the facts. Unauthorized entry, theft of personal property, conflict of interest via financial entanglement. Then, the tape. The judge reviewed the footage in silence. Finally, he looked up. Ms. Hartman, do you wish to respond to this? Julia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The judge nodded. Witness disqualified. Motion to strike future testimony from record, granted. Tom slammed his palm against the table. Claire didn't flinch. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored, but Claire didn't stop to talk. She walked straight to her car, got in, and drove to the lake. She parked at the same spot she and Tom used to picnic before they got married. The skyline shimmered in the distance. She opened her purse and pulled out the photograph of her, Tom, and their daughter, taken 3 years ago. She folded it once, then again, and dropped it into the wind. The legal system is often described as slow and methodical, but when it turns against you, it moves fast and without mercy. Claire learned this on a Wednesday morning when she opened her front door to find a subpoena in a sealed envelope. She wasn't surprised. She was prepared for blowback. But she didn't expect the document to include something far more serious than divorce proceedings. It was a notification of a criminal complaint, filed by Tom's legal team. The accusation? Corporate espionage and invasion of privacy. The irony nearly made her laugh. Victor Hastings didn't laugh. "They're hitting back," he said flatly, scanning the document. "Hard." The claim was that Claire, with help from Lucas Monroe, had accessed proprietary business information from Whitmore Group, using her old passwords to obtain financial data after separation. The subpoena demanded a forensic analysis of her devices, her cloud storage, even her personal email history. "It's retaliation," Claire said. "They want to intimidate us." "Yes," Victor nodded, "but it's also smart. They want the court to think you're the manipulator now." Even with Julia's removal from the witness list, Tom hadn't backed down. If anything, he doubled his efforts. Whitmore Group's PR team launched a series of philanthropy features, painting Tom as a family-first businessman caught in personal grief, trying to shield his daughter from unfounded public drama. Magazine covers, interviews, podcast appearances. "Divorce is hard, especially when it's one-sided," Tom said in a pre-recorded segment. "My priority has always been our daughter and her well-being. Everything else, that's noise." It wasn't just gaslighting, it was a rebranding. Claire was no longer the survivor. She was becoming the disruptor, the bitter woman clinging to a past that had clearly moved on. The public tide, which had initially shifted in her favor after the op-ed, began to sway again. But Claire wasn't alone. Lucas continued to investigate Tom's finances, and what he found cracked open a much darker layer of the Whitmore empire, a third LLC, buried beneath layers of shell corporations registered in Nevada, Florida, and finally, the Cayman Islands. The name? Astra North. Lucas traced funds from Astra North into development contracts, not just in Tom's name, but also signed by Julia Hartman's cousin, a man with no real estate experience. The money flowed in and out like a faucet. No taxes, no oversight. "This is beyond divorce court," Lucas said. "This is federal." Claire and Victor took the evidence to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division in Chicago. At first, the agents were skeptical. Ex-spouses made all kinds of claims. But when they saw the trail and the shell companies behind Astra North, they took the file seriously, very seriously. A special agent named Erica Delgado was assigned to the case. Young, focused, and sharp as a blade. She met Claire at the federal building 2 days later and spoke with the calm confidence of someone who'd already seen 100 men like Tom Whitmore try to dance around justice. "We can't promise anything yet," Erica said. "But if what you're showing is real, your divorce just became a federal case." Claire stared at the gray marble wall behind her. "I never wanted any of this," she said. Erica nodded slowly. "No one ever does." Meanwhile, the custody battle escalated. Tom filed an emergency motion for temporary sole custody, citing emotional instability, public exposure, and interference with business integrity. It was a surgical strike, intended to break her down while she was distracted by the criminal proceedings. Claire had one day to respond. She showed up to court not with tears, but with evidence. A letter from Ellie's therapist stating that the teen felt safer, calmer, and more emotionally supported in Claire's home. Screenshots of messages Tom sent their daughter, laced with guilt, manipulation, and veiled threats. And then came the voice memo, a 46-second audio clip recorded unintentionally by Ellie's smartwatch during a phone call between Julia and Tom. "She thinks she's winning." Julia's voice sneered. "Let her. Once custody's yours, we can bury her in legal fees until she breaks." The judge didn't even ask to hear it twice. Motion denied. Custody remained shared, but with a new court order forbidding Tom from speaking ill of Claire in Ellie's presence. It was a small win, but for Claire it felt like reclaiming oxygen. Still, the attacks didn't stop. 3 of her former friends, all once part of her charity circle, were approached by Tom's PR firm and invited to give statements about Claire's erratic behavior. 2 declined. 1 didn't. A gossip blog published excerpts from a supposed insider, claiming Claire had once thrown a wine glass during an argument with Tom and that she had a history of psychological episodes. None of it was true. But it spread fast. Claire stopped going out in public, not out of shame, but because she was planning her final strike. Lucas and Erica had finally uncovered the missing link. A single contract, signed off by Julia, funneling $600,000 to a real estate consultancy firm in Delaware. The firm didn't exist, but the bank account tied to it did, and it was in Tom's name. With the evidence in hand, the FBI prepared a sealed indictment. Claire wasn't told the exact date. but she was told to watch the news. So she waited. And on a bright Friday morning in July, while sipping coffee on her balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, Claire received a text from Lucas. "Turn on Channel 9. She did, and there it was. Real estate mogul Thomas Whitmore under federal investigation for tax fraud and money laundering. The screen showed agents walking into Whitmore Group's headquarters. Boxes of files, computers, a black sedan pulling away with tinted windows. Claire didn't smile, but she did finish her coffee. The summer heat had started to settle over Chicago like a wool blanket, dense, suffocating, heavy with tension, the kind of weather that made people sweat even when standing still. Claire Whitmore wasn't sweating, not on the outside at least, but inside, something had shifted. For weeks, she had played defense. Carefully measured statements, legal maneuvers, witness removals. She had kept her daughter safe, her lawyers focused, and the media mostly at bay. But now, after the televised raid, after the FBI quietly confirmed that the sealed indictment would be unsealed within the month, Claire realized something brutal and sobering. She was finally winning. But winning wasn't going to save her. The public didn't want a victory. They wanted blood. At 7:42 a.m. on the Monday following the raid, Claire's cell phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in almost 4 years, Madeline Bryce. They had once been best friends, more like sisters, met at a charity gala, bonded over a shared hatred of small talk and an obscene bottle of Pinot Noir. But after Tom's affair became public and Julia's name started appearing in invitations where Claire's used to be, Madeline vanished. The message was short. "I know something. Meet me, noon, no press. No explanation, no apology, just coordinates to a quiet wine bar near the Gold Coast." Claire arrived 10 minutes early, as always. Madeline showed up 15 minutes late, dressed like she had just returned from yoga, expensive yoga, her hair in a tight bun, sunglasses that cost more than Claire's monthly rent pre-marriage. But her face was different. Nervous, as if she was afraid of being followed. "I read the op-ed," she said, sitting down without a greeting. "You were brave." Claire didn't respond. Madeline leaned in. "I was at Julia's condo the night she stole that dress." Claire's eyes didn't blink. "You're certain?" "I helped her zip it up," Madeline whispered. "She said she was going to wear the witch's skin like armor. I thought she was being dramatic. I didn't know." She trailed off. Her voice cracked. "She told us you were drinking again, that you threatened Tom, that you weren't stable." Claire sat still for a long time, then finally said, "And you believed her." Madeline's voice broke. "I was wrong, I'm sorry." They talked for nearly 2 hours. Madeline, now estranged from the social circle she once worshipped, admitted everything. How Julia manipulated her way into the inner circle, how Tom rewrote his entire marriage history with Claire as the villain, and how they all just went along with it, because it was easier. "Claire," Madeline said, eyes watering. "She has your journals." Claire's stomach tightened. "What journals?" "From your time in Arizona," Madeline said. "The therapy ones. You left them in the lake house. Tom said he found them and gave them to Julia. She's been showing them to people. Out of context." Claire's mouth went dry. She hadn't thought about those journals in years. They were private, written during the hardest months of her early motherhood after Ellie's birth, when she struggled with postpartum depression and identity loss. In the wrong hands, those words could look damning. "Some days I wish I could disappear. I hate who I've become." She never meant them for anyone but herself. Claire raced back to Victor's office. He listened without interrupting, then pulled up his laptop. "If she's distributed them without consent, we can go after her for defamation and possibly privacy violations," he said. "But that doesn't fix the damage." "I want to release them myself," Claire said. Victor's brow furrowed. "Are you sure?" "She's weaponizing my trauma," Claire said. "Let me reclaim it." And so she did. The next morning, Claire published a second essay, pages they weren't meant to read. In it, she shared excerpts from her old journals, without filter, without apology. She spoke about the pressure of perfection, the lies women are told about strength, and how sometimes the ugliest thoughts are simply calls for help. It went viral in under 12 hours. The public, once swayed, then confused, now saw her raw, vulnerable, and most importantly, human. But it also pushed Tom over the edge. 3 nights later, Claire woke to the sound of glass breaking downstairs. She lived in a secure building. No alarms had gone off, no security calls, just the unmistakable sound of intrusion. She grabbed her phone and whispered into it as she crouched beside her bed. 911. There's someone in my apartment. She stayed low, heart pounding, until she heard the front door slam shut. Police arrived in minutes. No one was found, but a small camera was discovered, mounted behind one of her bookshelves. Hidden, recording. The tech team determined it was wireless, battery-powered, connected via a stolen Wi-Fi signal. Victor's voice cracked with fury the next morning. This wasn't just intimidation, he said. This was surveillance. Claire stared at the camera's charred remains. Do we think it was Tom? Victor hesitated. Or someone hired by him? The FBI wasn't pleased. They took the incident seriously, too seriously. The very next day, Claire and her daughter were relocated. For their safety. For the first time, Claire was no longer in control of the courtroom, the press, or her own home. She lived in a rental under a fake name. Her daughter registered at a different school. No makeup, no cameras, no press. But despite the fear, she felt lighter. She wasn't running anymore. She was surviving, and survival, as she had learned, was its own kind of revenge. In the weeks following her relocation, Claire lived a kind of double life. By day, she was a ghost, moving quietly through her temporary safe house in Naperville under the name Christine Wallace. No social media, no mail, groceries delivered. Her daughter, Ellie, was homeschooled via an online portal set up by the FBI's Family Services Unit. Even therapy sessions were conducted through a secure video line. But by night, Claire was a strategist. She was no longer afraid of Tom Whitmore. She was preparing to destroy him. FBI agent Erica Delgado became a near-daily presence in her life. Their conversations, once formal and cautious, evolved into direct tactical meetings. Erica wasn't just building a case, she was assembling a takedown. What we have now, Erica said one evening, is enough for wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. But what I really want is conspiracy. Claire frowned. Conspiracy with who? Erica pulled up a name on the screen. Julia Hartman. Her fingerprints are everywhere, Erica said. She's not just some side piece with a good memory. She's a co-conspirator. According to wire transfers recovered from Astronorth's shell accounts, Julia had personally signed off on 4 separate fund movements totaling $3.2 million, all through fake consultancy firms. Worse yet, Lucas Monroe, Claire's cyber investigator, discovered an encrypted messaging platform that Julia and Tom had used extensively. The messages were gone, but metadata revealed their timing. Each key message sent within 24 hours of the op-ed release, the leaked therapy journals, the fake emergency custody motion, and the night Claire's apartment was broken into. Erica leaned back in her chair. They're not just unethical, they're calculating, dangerous. Claire nodded, and they're slipping. The final piece came from an unexpected source, a whistleblower. An anonymous email arrived in Erica's inbox from someone claiming to be a former Whitmore Group accountant. The message was short and included a spreadsheet attachment. Ask him about Fund 73B, Cayman account. Start in June 2021. Within hours, Lucas confirmed its existence, a fund that hadn't appeared in any official filings. It was a black pool. Money from this fund had been used to pay off multiple non-disclosure agreements, including one with a woman named Lauren Tisdale, a former assistant who had left the company suddenly in late 2022. Lucas tracked her down in Indianapolis. She agreed to speak to Erica under whistleblower protection. Her testimony stunned even Claire. Lauren revealed that Julia had approached her with an offer: sign a blank NDA, walk away with $90,000, and never contact Claire again. When Lauren refused, she said Tom threatened to destroy her credit using his connections. Afraid and with no legal support, she signed. They made me part of their machine, Lauren said in her affidavit. I just didn't know the whole thing was built to ruin her. With the final puzzle pieces in place, the Department of Justice moved fast. On September 8, 2025, a sealed federal indictment was unsealed publicly. The charges were damning: 11 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of tax evasion, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit identity theft, and 1 count of organized enterprise racketeering under RICO. For both Thomas Whitmore and Julia Hartman, federal agents moved in simultaneously, one team to the Whitmore Group's downtown office, the other to Julia's luxury condo in Lincoln Park. Neither resisted arrest. By the time the news hit the morning cycle, it was everywhere. Chicago power couple indicted in RICO scandal. Claire Whitmore's ex and mistress face federal charges. RICO vises real estate, the fall of Whitmore empire. Claire didn't gloat. She didn't even watch the footage. Instead, she drove to the edge of Lake Michigan with Ellie and sat silently by the shore. She stared at the water for hours. When Ellie asked her if she felt happy, Claire whispered, "Not yet, but closer." In court, Tom and Julia pled not guilty. But the tide had turned. Key employees came forward. A second assistant admitted to falsifying company expenses under Julia's name. A forensic accountant confirmed fund embezzlement stretching back to 2020. Julia was denied bail. Tom's attorneys filed motion after motion to delay proceedings, citing stress, mental health concerns, and business instability. But the judge was clear. No one is above the law, especially not those who manipulate it. The trial was set for January 2026. In the weeks leading up, Claire returned to public life cautiously. She gave one interview, not to a tabloid or gossip show, but to a trauma-focused podcast hosted by a licensed clinical psychologist. She spoke softly, directly, without bitterness, about what it meant to be gaslit in public, about being branded unstable by the very people who engineered your collapse, and about surviving. "People ask me if I regret writing that first article," Claire said, "and the answer is no, because for the first time in years, I didn't let them speak for me." She didn't mention Julia's name once. Didn't have to. Ellie, now almost 17, slowly began reclaiming her own life too. Therapy, art. She joined a youth advocacy group for teen girls navigating trauma and divorce. She didn't speak often about her father, but when asked, she said only this: "My mom believed me. That's all that mattered." Then came the twist no one expected. A leaked deposition transcript from Julia's pretrial interview revealed something explosive. Julia had been recording Tom's calls for over a year. She thought he'd betray her eventually, so she kept voice memos, just in case. One of them, dated October 2024, included Tom admitting he had planted the hidden camera in Claire's apartment. "We needed to know what she was planning," his voice said. "She was getting too bold. If you want full custody, you can't leave things to chance." That one line changed everything. Tom was now facing additional charges: stalking and unlawful surveillance, both felonies. Julia, in turn, offered to testify against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. The ultimate betrayal of a betrayer. Claire didn't comment publicly on the new charges, but privately she told Victor, "He didn't just lose the case, he lost control of the narrative. That was always what he feared most." Victor smiled. He underestimated the wrong woman. Winter fell over Chicago with a kind of mercy. Snow came late, as if even the sky had hesitated to cover a city still shaken by revelations. The Whitmore trial dominated the media cycle for 11 straight weeks, and when the verdict came in on March 4th, 2026, it was swift. Thomas Whitmore, guilty on all 17 counts. Julia Hartman, guilty on 9 counts, reduced due to cooperation. Tom was sentenced to 27 years in federal prison without the possibility of early parole. Julia received 8 years, with the judge noting her opportunistic remorse. The courtroom didn't erupt. There were no gasps, no clapping, no tears, only silence. The kind of silence that settles when justice is finally done, not triumphantly, but necessarily. Claire sat in the back row during sentencing. She wore no makeup, no heels, just a navy coat, hands folded neatly in her lap. When the judge read the final words, she exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. Not relief, not satisfaction, but peace. The kind that doesn't roar, but rests. After the verdict, Claire declined all interviews. Publishers came calling. A major streaming service pitched her a limited series. She said no. Instead, she wrote one final column. Not for profit, not for exposure, but for closure. "This is not the end," by Claire Whitmore. "I've learned something terrible and something beautiful. You can survive without revenge, but not without truth. They will tell you the story is over now because the bad guy is in prison. But trauma doesn't end with a gavel. It echoes, softly, through birthdays, through silence, through the way your daughter looks at the front door twice before leaving. But so does healing. And if you're lucky and stubborn and very loud when it matters, you get to decide how the story ends. This is how mine ends. I'm not the villain in anyone's narrative anymore. I'm the author. The article was shared over 14 million times in 3 days. It was translated into 7 languages. A senator referenced it during a hearing on emotional abuse legislation. But Claire didn't read the comments. She was too busy helping Ellie choose a prom dress. It wasn't perfect, of course. Tom's lawyers filed an appeal. Julia was transferred to a lower security facility. Certain tabloids still questioned Claire's motives for going public. But she no longer fought shadows. She didn't correct the lies anymore. She built a life louder than them. In June 2026, Claire launched a nonprofit, the Whitmore Project. Its mission was simple: provide legal and psychological resources to women navigating high-conflict divorces involving power imbalance, media manipulation, or emotional coercion. It operated out of a repurposed warehouse in Bridgeport. No velvet chairs, no marble walls, just desks, therapists, and survivors, real ones. Claire never used her own story as the pitch. She didn't have to. The walls spoke for her. They were covered with letters from women around the country who had seen themselves in her writing. One from Oregon read, "He told everyone I was crazy. I thought maybe I was. Until you." Another from Miami, "I never called it abuse before. Now I do. Now I'm gone." Ellie started college in the fall. Art therapy major. She painted in oils now. Vibrant, violent reds, serene blues, splintered brushwork. One of her pieces was accepted into a student exhibit titled, "Reframed, Survivors See Themselves." Claire attended opening night with Victor, who by then had become not just her attorney but her closest friend. As they stood in front of Ellie's canvas, a jagged storm bursting over a silent figure, Claire whispered, "It doesn't feel like I lost anymore." Victor smiled. "That's because you didn't." But perhaps the most important moment came on an unremarkable Tuesday. Claire received a letter with no return address. It contained one sentence: "I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner." It wasn't signed, but she knew, and that was enough. What remained after everything wasn't just the wreckage. It was what she built with it. A daughter who no longer flinched, a name that meant something again, a truth that no one else could rewrite. She once feared becoming invisible, but now she walked the world unhidden. Not because everyone saw her, but because she no longer needed them to. She had seen herself, fully, finally, and she liked who she found. In a country built on laws and liberties, justice is often thought of as a courtroom victory. But the real fight, the quiet, exhausting battle, happens long before the verdict. It happens in whispered truths no one wants to hear, in broken homes, in silenced voices, and sometimes it takes just one woman refusing to stay quiet for the system to listen. Claire Whitmore didn't just win a legal war, she reclaimed her name, her daughter's future, and the right to tell her story, her way. Because in the end, justice isn't just punishment, it's truth, spoken out loud. And when we believe survivors, when we choose empathy over shame, we don't just change one life, we change the world they have to survive in. If this story moved you, if it made you pause, think, or feel, consider subscribing to the channel. We tell real stories, for real people. And every time you like, comment, or share, you help give a voice to those who were silenced. Stay curious, stay aware, and above all, believe the truth, even when it whispers.